Welcome to Capital City News, your source for staying informed and engaged with Salt Lake City government. I'm your host, Brian Young with Salt Lake City TV. We spoke with Andrew Johnston today, former council member and new director of homeless policy and outreach for Salt Lake City, about his new role. Our History Minute this week is about Plum Alley, the old Chinatown in Salt Lake City. But before we get to those, let's take a look at our legislative update, then we'll take a look back and a look ahead.
At its July 13th meeting, the City Council was briefed on mosquito abatement issues that would necessitate a property tax increase for fiscal year 2022 and gave preliminary support to an increase in pay for employees not represented by a union. At its July 20th meeting, the City Council, along with the mayor, adopted a joint resolution declaring racism a public health crisis. To learn more, visit slc.gov/council. The Salt Lake City Justice Courts conducted another round of Kayak Court recently. The judges held court along with social workers, attorneys, and other service providers from kayaks and canoes along the Jordan River in an attempt to help some of the most vulnerable folks in Salt Lake City by resolving as many of their legal issues as they could right there on the spot. Representatives from the Salt Lake City and Sandy City Recorder's Office and Salt Lake County Clerk's Office conducted a virtual Ask Me Anything session to answer your questions about ranked choice voting. To watch the entire session or to learn more about ranked choice voting, visit slc.gov/RCV. The drought isn't getting any better at the moment, and we all need to do our part to save water. Be sure to let your lawn go dormant, ensure your pipes are free of leaks, and conserve water where you can. Any water saved is water earned. Learn more at slc.gov/utilities/conservation. With COVID case counts on the rise again, it's more important than ever that you get your vaccination, wear a mask, and keep socially distant wherever possible. Despite what some might tell you, things are not back to normal. For information on where to get your vaccine, visit the county vaccination website.
For our road construction update this week, we're here overlooking the construction on 500 South, but we'll be talking about the construction on 300 West and all of the projects in Sugar House.
1700 South has been limited to one lane in each direction at 300 West, so plan to use other freeway exits and leave a little earlier or later to avoid traffic impacts. All businesses are open and available by way of right-hand turns. There are no left turns except at signalized intersections to keep traffic moving. Learn more at 300westslc.com. Multiple construction projects will be done by Salt Lake City in the Sugar House neighborhood over the next 5 years, from 2021 to 2025. When complete, these infrastructure projects will upgrade decaying underground utilities and improve street conditions for everyone. Projects from other agencies, like Utah Department of Transportation, and electricity, gas, and telecommunication companies are happening at the same time. This summer, we are reconstructing 900 East from Hollywood Avenue to 2700 South. Crews will be maintaining work zones on each side of the roadway. These traffic shifts will be ongoing throughout construction season. Anticipated completion of 900 East is fall 2021.
Remember that road construction season will last likely through November of this year and pick back up in spring of 2022. To keep track of these projects and any other road construction projects, especially those paid for with the Funding Our Future bonds, be sure to visit slc.gov/bondmap. For our interview today, I spoke with former councilmember Andrew Johnston about his new role as the city's Director of Homelessness Policy and Outreach.
Well, as a city, we have defined roles based on state state mandate and legislation. We have certain things we have to offer to citizens. As a city, we created a healthy living environment for our residents in this city. And in our case, as a capital city, we also create a healthy business environment, a healthy entertainment environment for folks who are visiting. Our population doubles every day, at least before COVID. And so we have both our citizens, we have the wider community and the Wasatch Front and the state of Utah. We have a lot of things involved in who we are as a city and what we do. Homelessness is very similar in that way. We do have homeless individuals who are part of our citizenry, who grew up here in the city, who were born here potentially, who have worked here, and for a variety of reasons become homeless. We also have folks who grew up elsewhere, and through life circumstances and their journeys ended up here, like a lot of other people do in this state, in this region. And so that's not remarkable. What is remarkable is the fact that for so long we took for granted, perhaps, that we had a large homeless population that was being served by somebody else. And through a number of changes in the system, which are good overall, it also exposed some gaps in our system. And the system is bigger than the city, but the city is the place where it's really become evident for a lot of folks that there's not enough beds for people right now. And it's a hard thing as an individual to really think about that there's individuals, adults, children, who literally have no place to sleep at night that's their own, or that's meant for human habitation. If you think about that too deeply, it really gets to the core of who we are individually and as a society. And that's a hard thing to sit with. So I understand the discomfort. It's also hard to watch folks who are dealing with mental illness or substance use issues, age-related issues increasingly in the homeless population, and watch how much that's a struggle is and see that very openly on the streets. It's one thing if you know what's happening in somebody's house and you have sympathy and help out your neighbors and things or family members in those situations and you have an emotional connection to them. It's also a different thing to see that so exposed on the street for folks just like us. And so it's hard to sit with that. It's hard to watch it. It's hard to come downtown sometimes and experience the byproduct of mental illness in folks outside your residence, outside your business, on the streets when you're walking around, on tracks, wherever it might be. That's difficult. We understand that. It's also something we have to address. As a society, we have a responsibility to help one another for a healthy society, because if we are going to allow a small number of people to just be left to fend for themselves out in the open, I think that doesn't speak well to any of us. And ultimately, I think it's going to cost us a lot more just financially. Not to mention the emotional burden on explaining to my children why we have homeless individuals out there and we are not doing enough. I think there's a combination of factors there for each of us to think through. From a city perspective, I do expect that we will take a lead in a lot of these discussions and issues. We are not going to go it alone. We're part of the larger Salt Lake County community. The Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness is the local homeless coordinating council here in the county, one of 13 in the state. We will report as a group up to the State Homeless Council, and Wayne Niederhauser is the executive, the coordinator at that level. And there's a State Homeless Council that will make ultimate funding decisions for the state and address as a statewide issue a plan to end homelessness. So we're going to be part of that system. We're going to involve it and speak to those issues, but we're also going to take a larger role perhaps than maybe other cities might, just by the nature of being the capital city. We have more resources in some ways. We have a bigger investment because so many folks are homeless here in our city. And so we're going to drive some policy. We're going to inform a lot of that through our data. We're also going to take, I think, a big role we have in the past and will continue to take a big role in the housing creation, because ultimately homelessness is about a lack of housing or affordable housing. And it addresses not just folks we see on the street, but larger numbers of people just under the surface, so to speak, who are temporarily housed, inconsistently housed, or based on market fluctuations may become unhoused very quickly. And so we have to, as a city, maybe do a little more on the housing front. We've done a lot, and we continue to do more. And then also help serve as a example, perhaps, of how we can do that on a larger scale in the county and the state. Well, the first thing I would do is get involved in the coalition, the Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness. That is an organization that's been set up as a true coalition of a lot of partners. There are business folk there are providers of services in the system, there are political leaders, there are citizens, there are youth at times, there are educators, there's everybody involved in that. That is a place where everyone's voice should be heard. There are folks who are formerly unsheltered or unsheltered now, Everyone should be at that place because that's where we come together with that large plan that everyone can be involved in. All of us are going to help execute that plan. So I'd start there. The second piece is I would make sure that we're aware of what's going on in your neighborhood. We know a lot of things happening, but things shift so quickly in the city, particularly in the summertime right now. Let us know what's going on your street, in your neighborhood. What are you seeing? What's your reaction at times? We want to make sure that you have information, and also we want to help bring you into the solution for these things, because there are things that all of us can do. So that interaction, that communication is going to be very important. And third, I would say ask questions. There's a lot of information out there, and people sometimes don't understand the whole system, because we're talking about a housing system, we're talking about a criminal justice system, talking about police to jail to the courts, talking about the treatment system for substance abuse and addiction issues, for mental health issues, age-related issues. There's so many systems involved that it's hard to wrap our head around sometimes, so we need to be able to get good information out to you, so ask questions and contact us. And then I would say being part of the whole discussion in housing. I keep saying housing a lot because this is so fundamental to what we're talking about. We have problems with wages and income and poverty in general, but housing really is a starting point for this discussion. If I can help somebody get into a place to live, even temporarily or for a short amount of time or permanently, it's so much easier to offer other services. Mental health services, substance abuse treatment services, all the different types of things we're talking about, case management. I know where you are. I know that you have some stability at night, so some of your symptoms will draw down a little bit, but housing is a big piece. So within our city, we have a lot of discussions about housing right now, from zoning discussions to the density of housing in your neighborhood to where certain things should go. Be a part of that. Come and learn, come and give input. We need as a city to talk about housing. We need as a region to talk about housing. If you're outside of Salt Lake City in the county, huge issue. We got to talk about this. Be involved in that particular discussion, because that will lead to some solutions.
Now it's time for our History Minute. In the mid to late 1800s, thousands of Chinese immigrants came to Utah to work on the railroads. After the Transcontinental Railroad was complete in 1869, many of those workers scattered to find homes elsewhere. Some decided to make Salt Lake City their home. Plum Alley, the street that connected 200 South with Orpheum Avenue between State and Main Street, became the hub of Chinese life and culture in the city. Businesses sprouted and New Year's were celebrated. Their parades through downtown boasted a 200-foot Chinese dragon, and the Chinese community leaders would cap things off with a meal with the mayor and police chief. In the 1890 census, 271 Chinese folks lived in Salt Lake City, and they thrived, growing to more than 1,800 in number at the time of Chinatown's demise. The alley boasted Chinese markets and laundries, as well as a community center to help Chinese workers find jobs. Nothing remains of this Chinese cultural center in Salt Lake City. In the 1950s, it was razed to make way for the Regent Street parking terrace. The only marker noting the history was installed on nearby Regent Street when it was remade with the construction of the Eccles Theater. That's it for another episode of Capital City News. Remember, the best way to stay engaged is to stay informed. You can do that by following us on social media at SLC.gov, subscribe to us on YouTube, or watch us on Channel 17. So, until next week, reporting for Salt Lake City TV, I'm Brian Young.